Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to another updated collection video for 2020. And today's video, again, is two labels. One is Network Releasing, and the other one is 101 Films. Both labels are a bit of a mixed bag. Network Releasing has a lot of ITV shows from 70s and 80s, and also an odd mix of films, mostly British films, and 101 Films have a Black Label season or collection where they have special editions of various films from the 80s and 90s, and they also have a standard edition of cult horrors and cult sci-fi, and kind of not particularly a pattern that you can follow. Both labels are fairly random. So I'll start with Network Releasing. They occasionally have sales on their website, and you can pick up a lot of Blu-ray things for like £4 and £6, things like that. But I'll start with a release that they made at the end of last year, which is the complete Monty Python's Flying Circus on Blu-ray for the first time. I did an unboxing of that last year, so check that out if you're interested in Monty Python. It's a beautiful set, and again I'll just go through the Network Releasing editions. This is Michael Apted's 7 to 63 Up, all 9 documentaries on a 4-disc set. This is a TV show from ITV that started in 1964, interviewing a bunch of 7-year-old children from various backgrounds in the UK, and every 7 years they were interviewed again, and it kind of follows their lives, which is a very interesting concept. Next on the list is Nicholas Roeg's Bad Timing with Teresa Russell and Art Garfunkel. Again, you'll see as I go through these releases, they are fairly random. Next is Black Narcissus, one of Powell and Pressburger's greatest achievements. And again, this is from ITV Studios through Network Releasing. Next isn't a British film, after me saying all this about British films. Again, it's just the random nature of Network Releasing. This is Capricorn 1, another enjoyable Peter Hyams film about fake moon landings, with a great cast of James Brolin and Elliot Gould, O.J. Simpson, Hal Holbrook, Telly Savalas, Sam Waterston. It's a great little film. Speaking of which, this is Deathline, with Donald Pleasence and Christopher Lee. It's a really creepy little British film about underground tunnels from 1972. Then we have Dream Home, again, not a British film. This is a really nice Korean film. No, Hong Kong film, sorry. And then we have a Laurel and Hardy, Flying Deuces. So again, you can appreciate it. It just goes all over the place. There's no real rhyme or reason to the releases. Then we have The Ghoul with Boris Karloff, which is a great wee film, and this has a commentary with Kim Newman and Stephen Jones. I think I got that for like $3.99 in their sale. And then we have The Hammer House of Horror. This is a complete series, 13 stories, starring an all-star cast, obviously Peter Cushing. Then we have Hands of the Ripper with Eric Porter, which is a fun little take on Jack the Ripper. Yeah, it's an unusual take, but very enjoyable. Then we have a modern film, The Hippopotamus, based on Stephen Fry's book. This stars Roger Allam, who people recognise from The Thick of It TV show. It's a really caustic, funny story about possible faith healing. There's no hippopotamuses in it, or hippopotami. Next is Jack the Ripper. It's a 2-part TV show from the 80s, I believe, starring Michael Caine, who gives a wonderful subtle performance, as Inspector Abilene of the Scotland Yard, with Lewis Collins and Jane Seymour and Armand Assante. Again, another interesting take on Jack the Ripper. Michael Caine does shout quite a lot in it. Then we have Hot Enough for June, a James Bond light with Dirk Bogarde. And then we're back to Michael Caine for the Ipcress File, which, watching again, I really enjoyed. It is a little gem, and it also stars Gordon Jackson, who would be the boss of the Professionals, with Lewis Collins. Next is Richard Burton and the Medusa Touch, which is a wonderful little film, Lee Remick and Harry Andrews, about telekinesis. It's daft but really well done. And then we have Powell and Pressburger's O Rosalinda, the last of their Technicolor films. I did a random review on this. You can check that out on the channel. Then we have The Outsider with George Sanders, and that's pretty much the reason I bought it. Again, I believe that costs a whopping $3.99. Then we have The Punch and Judy Man, Tony Hancock. Again, I did a double take on The Punch and Judy Man and The Rebel. Then we have The Quiller Memorandum, which should be better than it actually is. It's a spy film with George Segal, Alec Guinness, Max von Sydow, George Sanders, Robert Helpman. But for some reason it just doesn't gel and come together the way it probably should. Then we have the aforementioned Rebel, which has a copy of the last script that Galton and Simpson wrote for Tony Hancock that was never actually filmed. Then we have Rome Express with Conrad Veidt, which is a great wee film from 1932. Then we have Ransom with Sean Connery, where he plays a Swedish a cop with obviously a bit of a Scottish accent. Then we have 60 Glorious Years, a couple of Queen Victoria films that I picked up, basically for Anton Walbrook, which I haven't watched yet. Then we have Tales Out of School, 4 films with David Leland, which is Birth of a Rhino, Birth of a Nation, Flying into the Wind, Rhino, and Made in Britain. Then we have the 1940 Thief of Baghdad, Conrad Veidt, partially directed by Michael Powell. Then we have a 2-disc edition of Things to Come. Then we have Twins of Evil, which is an enjoyably daft Hammer horror with Peter Cushing, who plays an absolute swine in this before he kind of changes later in the film. Really fun film though. Then we have Unearthly Stranger with John Neville, which is a really creepy, well written, zero budget British science fiction film about a scientist who realises his wife might not actually be his wife anymore. We have Victim with Dirk Bogarde. And finally we have the other Queen Victoria film with Anton Walbrook, Victoria the Great. I mean, one of the good things with network Blu-rays is the fact they're quite thin, so you can get more on the shelf. So that's the fairly random, and it is fairly random, network releasing titles that I have. So I'm just going to go on to 101 films, which aren't any less random. So I'm going to start with just their straight releases, which are generally in kind of red type, and they are again a mix of science fiction and horror and cult. So the first one is The Alligator People, which is a bizarre little film about obviously science gone wrong in Louisiana, and a wonderful performance by George McCready. Lon Chaney's in it, even when George McCready is talking and spouting complete nonsense, he does it in a completely committed fashion. It's an interesting little film. Then we have the multi-directed, sporadic, not quite successful Amazon Women on the Moon. Then we have the Israeli revenge film Big Bad Wolves, which is about a father of a missing young girl who teams up with a disgruntled police officer to torture who they believe is a suspect in recent child murders. Yep, Big Bad Wolves. Then we have Black Christmas, pretty much the template for Halloween, which was made after this, and there's an interesting moment in the extras where the director Bob Clark was talking to John Carpenter about how maybe the next one he would set in Halloween. Yeah, whatever happened to that idea, I'm not quite sure. It has an unusual ending, and it never really had a sequel, even though you could argue that Halloween is perhaps a sequel. Yeah, interesting film and interesting extras. Black Christmas. Then we have a really daft science fiction one with Dana Andrews, Crack in the World, about a scientist who, to get renewable energy, thinks it's a good idea to detonate thermonuclear devices in the Earth's core, with hilarious consequences. Dana Andrews, who in general played, the good guy in his film career, plays a megalomaniac scientist in this, and it's a lot of rather enjoyable dumb fun. Next, it's difficult sometimes when you're a completist. It's the Dr. Goldfoot films with Vincent Price. So it's Dr. Goldfoot in the Bikini Machine and Dr. Goldfoot in the Girl Bombs, and you get an extra of Master of the World, but only on DVD. Master of the World is the best film out of the three. The other two are bizarre. Obviously Vincent Price is fantastic as usual, but when Vincent Price isn't on screen, they're not great. The second one, Dr. Goldfoot and the Girl Bombs, was actually directed by Mario Bava, for all you completists out there. And he has these two Italian comics, who were probably hugely funny in Italian, but don't quite translate. Next on the list is Future World, the surprisingly good sequel to Westworld. Then we have a couple of guilty pleasure films, the FX Complete Collection, FX1 and FX2. Then we have, for me, what might actually be John Landis's best film. I know that's controversial, but Into the Night with Michelle Pfeiffer and Jeff Goldblum. This is just so much fun. David Bowie turns up. Dan Aykroyd, John Landis himself, plays one of the goons employed by the villains. It's such a great little film. Then we have the Burt Lancaster and Michael York Island of Dr. Moreau, which might not be completely successful, but it's still watchable because of Burt Lancaster. Nigel Davenport's in it, and it did give Everlast and the House of Pain the samples that featured in their debut album. The law has been broken, back to the House of Pain. That's where it comes from. Next is It, the Terror from Beyond Space, or perhaps one of the influences on Alien. It is an enjoyably silly film about a stowaway, a rather unwelcome stowaway on a space mission. It is bizarre to see that even in space, the women in the team make the coffee. It's quite bizarre. Next is Lord of Illusions by Clive Barker. This has the theatrical cut and the director's cut on DVD. Sadly, the director's cut's only on DVD, with a commentary by Barker. Again, it's a film that you feel isn't quite what Clive Barker intended, but again, that's almost like every single film that Clive Barker directed. Next is The Lost World, which has more male chauvinism for the time, with Michael Rennie and Claude Rains. Next is the 4-film collection of Nemesis. I've only watched the first one, and it's a perfect example of a film desperately trying to be a cross between the Terminator, Blade Runner, desperately trying to be cool, desperately trying to be cult, and failing fairly miserably. Next is Play Dirty with Michael Caine, directed by Andre de Toth. A really cynical war film set in the desert. It has one of the best endings of all time, which I'm obviously not going to tell you about. Next on the list is Project X, which is a William Castle. So despite the low budget, it really is a lot of fun about somebody being brought back from cryogenics to get secrets out of them. It's a really enjoyable, another really enjoyable William Castle film that's fairly nonsensical but still really enjoyable. Next is Sky Riders, which I remember from my youth. Robert Culp and James Coburn about a kidnapping, and the only way to get to the kidnapper's base is to employ people who use gliders. I'm not sure how they pitched that idea to the studio, but never mind. It's very silly and enjoyable. Truck Turner with Isaac Hayes, which is okay for like the first half hour, and then Yaphet Kotto turns up and it elevates it. So no offence to Isaac Hayes, but the reason you should check this out is really for Yaphet Kotto, because he's fantastic in it, as he is in mostly everything he's in. Next is 2 Minute Warning, which is a really nice film about somebody wanting to shoot up people at a football game, with Charlton Heston, John Cassavetes as the SWAT team leader. It's got an all-star cast: David Janssen and Beau Bridges, Jack Klugman, Walter Pidgeon, Gina Rowlands, Martin Balsam, as we spend the film figuring out who's going to get shot. And that's the normal releases, if you can call them normal, from 101 Films. So we'll go to the Black Label season. Again, if you can point out a pattern or a kind of plan to these releases, please leave comments in the comments below. So number 1 is The Grifters by Stephen Frears. Again, they come in numbered cases, and there's booklets, as you'd expect from special editions. Number 2 is Cronenberg's Existenz, which is nice to see getting a lovely Blu-ray edition, if I can speak in sentences. Number 3, which I only have in the standard edition, which is actually quite upsetting because it's not as thick as the other ones. Roller Coaster, another one of those 70s all-star cast disaster films. This one's really good because it does have a documentary on the 70s, a roller coaster of disasters. Maybe one day they'll release Earthquake. Number 4 is Black Book by Paul Verhoeven. Number 5 is Walter Hill's enjoyable Trespass. Number 6 is The Cooler with Bill Macy and Alec Baldwin. Number 9 is Cronenberg's Rabid, another release of Rabid. Granted, I have it in Arrow as well, but it's Cronenberg. And finally, number 10, which I think's their newest release, Prom Night I think might be their newest release, Skinner, which is a bizarre low-budget film from 1993 with Ted Raimi, who's a slightly more famous brother, and Tracy Lords as a serial killer who literally skins people and wears their skin. The other titles in the series are Howard the Duck, but strangely enough I don't have that one. Yeah, again, no particular rhyme or reason to the releases. But yeah, network releasing in 101 Films, a strange mix, but a lot of fun can be had. So thanks very much for watching. I apologise for not being able to speak today, and hopefully we'll see you again for another updated collection video. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying farewell.